Bill.
Run!
Bill.
I'll leave it at that, mate. I'm not. My range isn't great.
That was not a range either. That was what we call monotone. In the business, my pops would say, "I sing solo, so low that he can't hear me," and that's what he prefers. Well, Bill, welcome back to Teach Me How to Wrexham, the inaugural season. We have Stockport up for our next match. We had just watched Grimsby, the Revenge, the Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah, and you know what? Obviously, this isn't a podcast to review games, but my lord, that was one of the best games I've been to at the race course, mate. That was they were unbelievable, much better than I was expecting. So quite happy to get my predictions wrong every now and again, mate, as long as it's for the better.
Yeah, that was so good. And I said some erroneous numbers too that I won't even repeat. I was so far off, but yes, that was such a good win. I don't know if you felt like this when the win was secured, right? That third goal goes in and you feel, all right, that cements the win. We are good. We're getting the win. It started feeling like, I don't know, my confidence changed towards the whole season. Now, of course, this confidence could be swayed again later on with some hard losses, but at the moment I went, that's what I remember. This feels good.
Yeah, and we Parkinson's teams always take a little bit of time to get going. So, you know, for that to happen was yeah, like you say, it's a bit of a confirmation that his teams do get going eventually. You just need to give them a bit of time. Yeah, very happy.
Yeah, that's it. Where were you sitting at in the stadium?
So I sit in the tech end, or it's the Stoke cold brew coffee stand, it's called now.
Okay.
But it's like,
is it really?
It must be called the tech end. Yeah.
Oh,
so
okay.
Tech comes from universities in the UK used to be split between a normal university and technical colleges. So the university that's just behind the racecourse, it's now just called Wrexham University, but it used to be called Glyndŵr University. That was a technical college at one point, so it's the tech end because that's the end where the technical college used to be.
Wait, so, when did they change the name? Because that was pretty recent.
The university, this year, couple of months, maybe not even that.
They capitalized on the welcome to Wrexham.
It should have always been called that, but they used to actively avoid being associated with Wrexham, and now it's the other way around. Now there's a bit of a
yes. Is tech vocational, like where you learn trades and stuff like that?
It used to be. It's not anymore. It's a proper just normal university now. But 20, 30 years ago, it would be the more. Someone can correct me in the comments, but I think it was like the more like engineering and things like that.
Okay. All right. Hey, that's cool. Well, I'm glad that they're making the change. So now the tech end, which was the only name I knew for it, is now the Stoke Racecourse end, or is it just the Stoke Cold Brew?
So the ground's the Stoke Racecourse, and it's the Stoke Cold Brew coffee stand, which is a bit of a mouthful. Everyone's going to just call it the tech end, or it's not that many sponsors, mate, that you probably just call it the sponsor that you first started seeing it as. So I'll always call it the Eric Roberts, because it was, I can't even remember what Eric Roberts make, but they used to sponsor, I think they were a building firm, they used to sponsor that stand. It's been the Glyndŵr University stand, so some people will call it the Gus. You just call it, you call it whatever.
Yeah. Well, and we planned this. This wasn't happenstance.
100%,
we're talking all this Stoke talk, all this Stoke talk, because we're facing Stockport. Which, so I found a little bit of information before I jump in and hand it off to Bill. I'm going to share a couple of things that I found. So just as a recap for any new viewers that are out there, not making the mistake and saying new fans. That's stupid. Who would say that? Not me. So any new viewers out here, I'm Ran. This is Bill. Bill is a member of the comms team for Wrexham. He also is the premier podcast guest of the century. So you have seen him or heard him and will continue to see and hear him on podcasts around the world. What we do is look at an upcoming opposing team, and Bill gives me good information that I don't know about Wrexham and their perspective towards that team. I don't know a lot, about who we're facing in League Two. So pretty much all of this is new information. And at times I get to look up some things and then share them with Bill if he has heard of that or not. And he lets me ramble on. So
yeah. I mean, this time it's one of the few teams in League Two that people may be a bit more familiar with, because obviously 2 seasons ago we had a bit of a title battle with Stockport. So it's funny how Grimsby and Stockport have come back to back. It would only could have been topped if we'd have had Notts County for the next home game, but that's you know, we're playing them a little bit later on, aren't we? Yeah. And I got quite a bit to say about Stockport, so I'm interested to see what you've read.
Okay, I'm not giving any juicy details. Let me just say that right off the front. If you want juicy details, I will clock my time, put it at the bottom of this video so you can fast forward to Bill's part where he says the juicy details.
Look, your bits are always good, Ram, because you bring facts that I don't know about clubs, because you've done your homework, whereas I don't do my homework as much.
Yeah, well, I bring facts that maybe nobody cares about except for me. For instance, the name Stockport is derived from 2 Anglo-Saxon words: stock meaning wooden castles or stockade, and port meaning the cleared wood, the area where they cleared the wood from to make that stockade or stock. So you put those 2 words together, and Stockport, both.
That makes sense.
The structure and the clearing of where it came from. So,
nice.
So I mean, I love etymology of words. So that's good to know. And obviously, we are far away from the times where that would be anything that anybody understood or associated, especially with the team. So I saw that they originally were Rovers, like some other teams that we've seen in the past. They are now the Hatters, because in the 18th century, it was one of the largest hat-producing towns, I assume in the UK, and they had over 100 hat-making factories in Stockport at one point in time.
So I'll just cut in slightly there.
Yeah.
A lot of clubs are named after their nicknames come from whatever the industry was that town's famous for. So obviously Wrexham is a bit different, because Wrexham's a market town. It was lots of different mines in villages around Wrexham, and then that's obviously where everyone used to go to trade. So it's not really got a single sort of thing to pull from. But Stockport are the Hatters. Luton Town are also the Hatters for the same reason.
Oh, okay.
Stoke City, the Potters, because there's a lot of pottery. There were a lot of potteries in Stoke. Trying to think off the top of my head. I'm sure Reading used to be nicknamed the Biscuit Men or something like that, because there used to be that. I don't think they're nicknamed that anymore, but I'd have to double check that. But that's because there's a lot of biscuit production and so on. You can go through pretty much every English, British club and find a nickname linked to their industrial history. Gunners, that's the other one. The one that people don't realise that the name Arsenal comes from them being their team came from a gun factory.
Wow, yes.
So their nickname's the Gunners, but Arsenal is literally because they produced Arsenal weapons.
That is,
and they used to be called Woolwich, because I think that was the area, Woolwich Arsenal, and then they just ditched the Woolwich eventually and stuck with Arsenal.
That is amazing. And it's right in front of your face. I can't say that I was too young when some of these names that are obvious hit me in the face. I was in my low 20s when I was talking to somebody that had a missing windshield. And I don't know, do you guys call them windshields?
Yeah.
Okay. They had a missing windshield on their car. And I said, wow, that's got to be really rough without a windshield. I mean, like, what do you have to shield you from the wind? Okay. It's a windshield.
Yeah.
And up to that point, I had never put that together, but it makes sense. Arsenal, I mean, from all these industries that we've seen, even like this season with our episodes, we've seen so much of that, like on the nose naming, which of course it is. Yeah, that's what it's named.
And in true British fashion, there will be teams like, what are you barking at? There'll be the dog doesn't agree. There'll be teams that that have names that you think should be related somehow to that, and it probably isn't. So don't like completely.
Okay.
British and English in general is just a confusing language, isn't it? So it's not necessarily Reading FC. It's spelt like reading. They're not known for being particularly literary based football club. Their nickname was, I've just double checked, it was the Biscuit Men. They call themselves the Royals now, which is a bit rubbish. I much prefer the Biscuit Men, to be honest.
The Biscuit Men is amazing.
Yeah.
I would go there just to see if the biscuits were worth it. We're the Biscuit Men. I'll see about that. I will go.
And of course, a biscuit in Britain as well is what you guys would call a cookie rather than whatever you'd call whatever a biscuit is. I know biscuits and gravy is a thing in America, but I've never tried it, so I wouldn't even have any frame of reference there.
But biscuits over here are essentially more dense, hearty, like a soft scone,
right?
A more dense, hearty, but soft, buttery roll. And so it wouldn't be as airy. It's more dense. And so biscuits and gravy would be just pouring gravy all over the top of, and typically like a white gravy, like a white pepper gravy, and all over. And so you get all that fat, that butter, the salt, all that umami flavoring. So it definitely is one of those like home cookings where if you say biscuits and gravy to an American, that's we're getting some home cooking. We're eating big today, and we don't care what the calories say. Yeah.
Brilliant. So sorry, what were you saying anyway before I rudely interrupted with the Hatters thing?
I was not saying anything, but one of the other things that always confuses the hell out of me, where you were saying some names are on point and some aren't, is the Cockney rhyme scheme. Like that always confuses me.
That's not always something I quite understand. I mean, you got to be in a certain part of London to really properly get Cockney rhyming slang. I know apple and pears is stairs, dog and bone is phone, and that's it. That's all I know off the top of my head anyway.
Well, I got into it because I was looking up where does nutmeg come from, to nutmeg somebody.
Yeah.
They were saying nutmeg was Cockney rhyme scheme for legs. So to put it between somebody's legs.
Well, yeah. I didn't know that. It makes sense though.
And I was like, I will never understand the Cockney rhyme scheming. That's just not. It'll never click for anybody from the Cockney area. I think you're fine people, so don't take that as a diss. It is not a slight.
That's like becoming our catchphrase. Well, your catchphrase now, isn't it? I
think you're fine people. Okay. I don't want any enemies. There's a line of them that are still looking for me. I don't want them to find me, and I don't want new ones to tell them the old ones where I'm at. It's just the way it is. Back to Stockport. So, unlike Grimsby and some of the other towns that we have seen, and Stockport is a town. It is not a city. They are actually listed as one of the nicest places to live in Northwest UK. So
really?
Oh yeah. So they have a okay reputation of a nice place to live. The definition of nice, we don't need to go into. I don't need to know how to quantify that. I'll just take it as it is and leave it alone.
I wouldn't say it has a particular reputation for being one way or the other, Stockport, to be honest. I've been to Stockport a few times. Doesn't seem like a bad place, but I wouldn't necessarily associate it automatically with being nice. But who knows? Could be a friendly town.
Yeah, going through it, you weren't overly compelled to, I could live here. I'd move here. So
it's quite similar to Wrexham, really, but
yeah,
it's kind of like if I was leaving Wrexham, it wouldn't be to go to somewhere else like Wrexham. It would be to go somewhere that was either an upgrade or in the countryside. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, and it's like Wrexham, except for they are the Hatters, and Wrexham are known modernly as the Promotioners. And so it's a different association with the industry in which Wrexham is.
Of course.
They are also called Stockportians. So not a Wrexhamer. I don't know what do you call somebody from Wrexham? Wrexhamite?
Yeah, I guess. Usually a knobhead, to be honest.
What do you call somebody from Wrexham? You don't.
Yeah,
you don't call them. No. Yeah, so I don't know the etymology of that. I didn't dig into it. Don't worry about it. But Stockportian. So yeah, that's
Again,
what they're
the
called.
English language in is all its confusing glory.
Yeah. Well, and if you want to study a language, anybody around the world, and you want to be frustrated out of your mind, go ahead and study our language. Study English. It will frustrate you, confuse you, make zero sense. The pronunciation is not phonetic, and if it is, it's on accident. So good luck, anybody out there.
It's like I can't speak fluent Welsh. Don't get me wrong. My Welsh skills are okay. Probably not as good as when I was in university in Bangor, which is for those who haven't got a great Welsh geography. It's kind of like it's the heartland of the Welsh language. Most places in Wales are 20% Welsh speaking, 80% English speaking, first language. But Bangor is 80, if not plus 80. Percent Welsh speaking. It's that northwest Wales where there's other parts of Wales as well, but northwest Wales is really Bangor, Carnarvon, Holyhead, all those areas. Apart from the students who go to live in Bangor for the university, it's pretty much predominantly first language Welsh there. So I got my Welsh got quite good then, but it's not as good now. And everyone says it's a confusing language, and it is, but phonetically it all makes sense compared to English. So once you get your head around aspects of it, it's easy.
Right. It's like hard, that first step, learning how to ride the bike. But once you're rolling, everything else is good and easy.
Yeah, it's one thing that I hate about the way people speak about Welsh, outsiders, is that they say they'll look at a Welsh word and go, oh, there's no vowels in that. It's like, well, in Welsh, W and Y are both vowels. And we have a couple of extra letters. So a CH and a double L are classed as, and there's more, but they're classed as one letter, even though it's written down as two. So I'll stop. Man, we can do a teach me how to Welsh another time, and we'll actually get someone who can speak it in.
Yeah, and anybody that's out there that thinks that English is a superior language, you obviously know zero other languages, because it is the worst language in the world. It makes the least sense linguistically, and if you think it is the best language in the world, maybe you're just one of those people that likes walking uphill backwards in the rain. Maybe you're just a weirdo. I don't know, but maybe you are. Speaking of pissing off people, sorry for cussing. Sorry for cussing there. I saw that Stockport's main rivals are Burnley and Stoke City. I would have thought
they're a bit of a weird club, Stockport, in the sense that even though they might be listed as Burnley and Stoke, I don't think they have a real proper rivalry. They don't have one team. That's why there was a bit of like, when we were going at it for the title race, a lot of people saying, oh, look, it's Stockport trying to force a rivalry with Wrexham. I know it would be easy to be suckered into it as an international fan. I mean this with no disrespect, so sorry if it sounds like it, but you're going off what you see on Twitter. So if you see Wrexham fans going at Notts County fans and Stockport fans, it's all you've known, isn't it? It's absolutely fair enough. But historically, it's quite a close game. We've had some tasty fixtures with them in the past, but it's not something you'd consider a rivalry. It's that kind of like middle ground where it's a great place to go. It's always going to be a feisty atmosphere because they're a big club, similar sort of size to us. They travel away really well because they're well supported, and we travel away really well because we're really well supported. It's one of the few clubs that's only about an hour or so away, so it's always going to be a big-ish game. But I wouldn't say it's not a derby day. It's not a rivalry. It's just a bit of a feisty affair when we play them.
And they're right around Manchester. So
yeah, so Stockport's a town just outside Manchester. They get a bit of they get on their high horse a little bit when you try to say they're from Manchester, because technically they've got a Cheshire postcode, so that's just outside Greater Manchester. They don't like being called Manx. They prefer being, they're from Stockport. They don't consider themselves as part of Manchester at all. But what's the best way to annoy someone?
Yes,
is to go for something like that, isn't it? So
exactly.
It was Stockport was actually the first away game I ever went to. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Other than the LDV Vans Trophy final, because that was in Cardiff. It was the first time I'd gone to a normal league game at another ground, and their grounds is another ground that's quite similar to the racecourse. 10,000. They've got one stand behind the goal that is absolutely massive. And then the away end that's behind the goal is not so massive, and it doesn't have a cover over it. So when it's hot or when it's windy or rainy, it's bloody awful on there.
How considerate of them to treat the away fans.
I know. And it's probably, other than the race course, it's probably the ground that I visited the most, just because it's so close to Wrexham. So my first game I went...
Yeah. Are you going to say what year that was? Because I'm trying to do the math of when Stockport was in the National League and not in the National League North.
Yeah, so it's a good point, that. So I went to see us play Stockport in 2005, and we were both in League One then, but we also both got relegated that season. And then the next year we played them. We played them and lost 5-2 in the away game, and it was awful because I'm sure we might have gone 1-up, and if we didn't go 1-up, it was like 2-1 for quite a big period of the game. They went up to 4-1. We got one back, and then they just scored that fifth goal, and it proper killed us off, and it was awful. So I had that real contrasting experiences. Like the year before, it was 4-1. We absolutely battered them. We scored all 4 goals in the first half hour. Proper took our foot off the gas then, and then the second time we played them, they absolutely battered us, and it was awful. And then the year after that, we played them at Stockport again, and I think we lost 1 or 2-0. So yeah, that wasn't good. And we went down in 2007. I think they came down in 2011, but they only played a season or two in the National League before they got relegated to the National League North. Do you know what? It's quite unusual for a club to go as far down as National League North and then make their way back up, because it's kind of like, for these big league clubs with huge wage bills and everything, it's usually a death sentence to get that far low, because club's probably in proper financial ruin by the time it gets to that point. So they've actually done pretty well to eventually make their way back up. And I've always sort of seen them as a good solid club. I've always had a bit of a soft spot for them. Not so much in recent years when it's become a bit more feisty, but you know what, fair dues to them as a club. They've done well to get that far up.
Well, and they were breaking records in the National League North. So they were breaking records, I think, multiple seasons in a row of attendance records. And so they were pulling, 5,000 people to a game to a National League North. For anybody that's watching this doesn't know, that is the tier under the National League. So 6th tier, even below the National League, we were going or seeing National League games that were out there where they've, got 900 or 1,000 people at a match. Yeah. And they're over here a tier below it with 5,000. So their fans, they stuck with them. They kept on watching.
Yeah, they did. Fair play. And, and they had to play clubs that were, at one point in their history, they were in what is now the Championship. They've had periods in the Championship. Big club would have been playing big teams, and then they're going to the likes of Barnsley Celtic and Blythe Spartans and what have you. And even more pathetic than those two clubs, who I wouldn't say are pathetic, they had to go to Chester. They had to play Chester. So unlucky for them being involved in that.
It's the rash that won't go away.
It is the rash. Yeah. I mean, we say, Ran, you say, fine people and all that. I don't even think we can class Chester fans as humans. But let's move on from that before I get...
Don't abuse anybody's memory of me saying that at any point in time, because I never have and I never will.
But yeah, they actually in the 80s had the first South American manager to manage in the Football League. Yeah. So Danny Bergara, and I only know that because they have a podcast, the Scarf Bergara War.
Oh, really?
That's where it comes from, because they have a chant that's the Scarf My Father War, and I don't know what the lyrics are, but it's about obviously going to the Stockport games with your dad, and then they've done the play on words with that for their podcast. So
that's cool.
He was Uruguayan, and he managed Stockport for 6 years in the late 80s, early 90s. So it's a bit of history there with them, and do you know what? I just find it hard to hate them. I know that they've been a bit annoying over the last couple of years when we've come across them, but they are a proper club, Stockport, and it's nice to see them having a bit of success as well. As long as it's not at our expense, I don't mind them having a bit of success. I think they deserve what they've gone through. Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead and beat MK Dons last week, but don't come for us.
Yeah.
What's wrong with you?
So So they've had a bit of a mixed start to the season, really, haven't they? Well, about 13th now, and like you said, they've beaten MK Dons, who are sort of being touted potentially as automatic promotion favourites, but they're in 13th, and it still is too early to say, really, isn't it? But I think they've just got they've got a squad that is too good to be in 13th, so it'll be interesting to see if their manager sticks around for much longer, if that's how they keep on going.
Yeah, and what about the history between Wrexham and Stockport? So you alluded to the away games in 2005. Going forward, where does the sour taste of Stockport come from?
That's a good question. I think it probably started when they first came down. We were we'd been playing against a lot of teams that didn't have particularly big grounds, or if they did have big grounds, they were all down south. So it was hard to, you can't always justify on a Saturday spending 5 hours there, 5 hours back. It's a long way, isn't it? Even if it is a team with a big ground, it's just kind of like you can't always do it. So when they came down, it was really like a big, yes, okay, they're not an actual derby, but we'll have a close big club that we can go to. And unfortunately, the hooligan element of both teams kind of latched onto that as well. So I remember seeing a bit of scrapping on the street by the Mould Road stand after we played them in the home game. Nothing horrendous, but you don't see fighting that often. It's usually hooligans will go out of their way to meet up somewhere where there isn't police around if they really want to have a fight. Do you know what I mean? That they will make sure that they're not going to get arrested to get out of their system or whatever. But it kind of spilled onto the street straight after the game. And then we had a few feisty encounters with them in the league after that. I remember a game with Neil Ashton. It was one of our older left backs, around the 2012-13 period. I can't remember the exact date of the game, but we played them, and he scored a penalty. And I'm sure he stuck his fingers up to the Stockport fans, and that kind of that went off as well. And that never helps. When there's already a little bit of tension in the air anyway, your player as an away fan, you absolutely love to see him stick a penalty in right in front of you and then give it big into the Stockport fans. But obviously it doesn't do very well for the relations of the two clubs. And then when they get relegated after having a bit of a rubbish season, and eventually when they come back up, it's like it's almost like the opposite, but the same. They've gone from they've been the team that have been playing rubbish teams with no one near them, and they've come back up, and it's like great Wrexham's and that fixture's back on the calendar for us, and then then COVID sort of hits not long after that, and I think just being in that title race with them then sort of puts it up a notch again, because it's not just about beating a team that are quite local. You're trying to get the league from them, and we all know what the National League's like. Wrexham was stuck in there for 15 years because it is an absolute hellhole bottleneck to get out of, and as we saw with Notts County last year, it changes the dynamic of the relationship that you have with the club that you go in for promotion against. Whereas you might see this year, if we're lucky enough to still be in an automatic promotion battle, let's say we're playing Gillingham and it's towards the back end of the season and we're both looking comfortable in first and second, there will not be that tension that we've had with Notts County. Do you know what I mean? It might actually be quite a fun atmosphere. It'll be like, let's see who's the better team out of the two of us. And if you win, shake hands afterwards and move on. But because the National League, everyone just wants to get out of it desperately. It just gives that puts a bit of fire into it. Yeah. So it's going to be interesting if we have a title race with some of these clubs that we've, Stockport and Notts County particularly, what the atmosphere is going to be like.
What was that year for the people that weren't tuned into Wrexham yet and didn't know? What was the year, and at what point in the title race was that where Stockport broke away from Wrexham?
It was the year that was chronicled for the first season of Welcome to Wrexham. So that's 21-22. We play them in the November and lose 2-1 at Stockport. So my record of seeing losses at Stockport County's ground increased, unfortunately. We went up one. Wrexham fans went absolutely mental, probably a bit too far. Someone broke the advertising hoarding off, and we were people were passing the board around the crowd. Which is a bit ridiculous. And then they go and score 2 and beat us, and it was just one of those sort of games. We then played them in the FA Trophy semi-final and won 2-0. But both the goals came in the, in like the 89th and 92nd minute or something like that. And that's the game that if you see Ryan Reynolds in interviews, he came to that game by himself for the first time. So Rob wasn't there. And it's the game he sort of credits as being the one that really made him fall in love with football, because that last minute goal was, and the atmosphere was brilliant. Took us to a final at Wembley. I know we ended up losing that, but that kind of reignited the rivalry a bit. Then we both go on a bit of a run. After that, I think we lost or drew a couple of games in that run-in, and they looked guaranteed pretty much to win the league, but we had to play them at the racecourse in the run-in. So I want to say there was about 3 or 4 games left maybe at that point, but they had the game in hand on us. So even though we beat them 3-0 and we went top, we were top on goal difference, and they won their game in hand, and we lost one of the games in the run-in, and that just kind of killed it off in the end, really. There was still mathematically a chance on the last day of the season, but they scored 2 early goals against Halifax, and you could just, watching the game, the Wrexham game, whilst that was happening, you could tell that the players must have heard what the score was at Stockport, because that you could just see like the motivation sort of drain out of them. It's like, even if we win today, we can't win the title. So that was that. But it made it interesting that we got the better of them, but ultimately they deserved to win the league that year, and it was just one of those things. We took it closer than maybe it probably should have been, but as much as you're gutted that you don't win the league, it wouldn't have been like, say, if Notts County beat us and they ended up winning the league, I'd have been really bitter about that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But everyone had sort of resigned themselves for the last month or two that we were probably going to lose it to Stockport. So it wasn't really that kind of kicker that it would have been. Yeah.
And even though
someone's going to be in the comments going, "No, I was gutted. What are you on about? I hate Stockport."
yeah. Bring us their heads.
Yeah.
When you were in the crowd, obviously, for the game. Oh, hello, Puffer. How are you doing? Nice. I'm sorry I interrupted you again. My apologies. But so the crowd there. The games are played at the same time, right? Like the Stockport game would have been played at the same time that Wrexham's match is going on. And
so that was an away game that I didn't get to. So I don't know what the atmosphere was like in the crowd from first-hand experience. But my cousin was there, and he said that even though after we lost, the Wrexham fans stayed for 15 minutes singing and chanting, in sort of support.
Yeah.
Because obviously at that point, nobody wants the players' heads to go down, because we're then going into a playoff run, and we ended up playing Grimsby next. And there was obviously just a little bit of a hangover from not winning the title. That game against Grimsby was a bit mental, 5-4. You can't really account for that. But I do genuinely think the players had lost a bit of steam from losing that game and losing the title. Yeah,
definitely, because the title being so close and then slipping away, if that doesn't hit you, like, I mean, no thank you as a person, because I want somebody who's not a sociopath and a serial killer. I want to root for people who have regular human emotions. So if you're someone who is unfazed, I don't need to talk to you too much, because I don't want to be accomplice when you tell me where the bodies are buried. So yeah, definitely need those feelings and those emotions. And man, hats off to the Wrexham fans, staying 15 minutes and still giving that support and that love, and quite possibly, like we were saying before, that butterfly effect, that type of support could have very well helped them keep their heads in the match versus Grimsby that made it so damn close. That could have been a win.
There's absolutely no coincidence that we do so well in the last 10, 15 minutes of a game, even when we're looking like we might lose or draw. And the fact that the crowd and the atmosphere has been so good over the last 2 years, and still is at the moment, it's huge. It makes a huge difference. All right, granted, I'd be a liar if I said I haven't been in some rubbish atmospheres at the racecourse, but the atmosphere is always going to be, if the players are playing well, the atmosphere is going to be good. Any club in the land, apart from maybe in the Premier League when it becomes very sterilised, and it's all £1,000 for a season ticket and all that sort of nonsense. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. like it is a bit different. They kind of, you pay £1,000 or £1,500 to pay for a season ticket. You might expect to be winning most weeks. Do you know what I mean? But at our level, as long as the team's are playing well, you're probably going to get a good atmosphere from the fans, and all credit to the players. They thrive off us and we thrive off them, and it's a nice symbiotic relationship between the two at the moment, I think.
Yeah, Rob, and I probably more so Rob, has said, the goal is the Premier League, and that's where he wants to get to. I'm in no rush to get there. To see the team get to the point where to watch a game, you must own a franchise yourself to get a ticket to go see them. I'm in no rush.
It is one of those things, isn't it? And I know a lot of fans of different clubs that bounce between the Championship and Premier League. Teams like, I don't know, Wolves have been doing well for the last couple of years, but historically they bounce between the two. West Brom, Norwich. A lot of their fans say they prefer the Championship because they're winning most weeks there. It's more fun to be beating teams week in, week out than it is to go up to the Premier League and get battered week in, week out. It's like, all right, we might be playing Man United, but it's no good. I don't want to see it. Don't want to see the team lose, but it doesn't matter, Ran. Anyway, when we're in the Premier League,
we'll
win it. We'll win it 5 years in a row. And then we'll give another team a chance, but we'll win the Champions League that year, so it's fine.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, and then the champions, and then what do you want? You want the first club team entering the World Cup? Is that what you want?
Yeah. Let's just annex Wrexham from the whole of the UK. Will be the independent state of Wrexham.
Yeah, the Vatican City of the UK.
Yeah. They can all have visas and not visas, sorry, passports, and we might see Paul Mullin not represent Wales like he wants to. He might represent Wrexham in the World Cup.
Right,
why not?
Right. Paul Mullin's first World Cup appearance will be for the country of Wrexham. Yeah.
Wrexham, the only place in the world that is a city, a county, and a country at the same time.
All in once. And people will still be saying at that time, up the town.
Yeah. Yes, they will. Yeah.
They're like, up the country.
It'll always be a town to me, regardless.
Because we're dealing in realism here. So that's don't anybody that's listening to this is actually us giving you a glimpse to the time machine that we had made a couple of weeks ago. We've had a peek into the window of what you would call the future, what we call Tuesday. And it is Wrexham as a country. Paul Mullin has been rise to emperor status. He is above the royalty at this point in time. And we're all for it.
The emperor of the independent state of Wrexham. It's got a bit of a ring to it, isn't it?
Yes, the free state of Wrexham. Yes. Yeah. So speaking of Mullin and players that we cheer for,
That's
we
good
have
segue,
any?
Ram. Fair play.
Yeah. Do we have any ex-Wrexham players that have went to?
Certainly did. There's only let me just have a look. There's only the one ex-Wrexham player that I can see here, and that is Akil Wright. So he played for us under Dean Keats and primarily played as a centre midfielder. And he was kind of known as being like, whenever he didn't play, people were like, why isn't Akil Wright starting? And then whenever he did play, people were like, why is Akil Wright starting? Like he was like, he clearly had all the physical attributes to be a very good player, but just couldn't piece it together for some reason. Now, since he's been playing for Stockport, he's actually changed to a centre-back, and by all accounts, they quite like him. I don't know how good he is. I haven't seen him play since they signed him, because they signed him in League Two. But he's well liked there. So, he's an ex-Wrexham player, and then there's no other. Sorry, Ran, I'm gonna have to let this bloody dog out. Give me a second.
Who let the dogs out? Bill. So again, this is where we talk all that trash about Bill. We'll say that, damn it. Not enough time, Bill. He's back. He's back.
he can pester the cats instead now.
Yeah, there you go.
So Other than that, obviously, though, there's a lot of players that are kind of familiar to us. One player that they signed over the summer, Nick Powell, was actually really heavily linked with us. So there's a lot of
one of the ones we thought we might get.
Yeah. So before we signed a few players, actually, he's kind of like, I'm trying to think of his style of play is a bit similar to Elliot Lee, I suppose. He's like that, like an attacking midfielder. Or what Elliot Lee was before we signed him, because he's kind of changed his game since he's come to Wrexham. He used to play for Man United, but he was in their youth system, didn't really play a huge amount. He was actually at Crewe's youth system and then signed for United. Played on loan for a couple of clubs, then played for Wigan and Stoke. Spent a lot of time at Stoke, but by all accounts didn't play a lot of games because he got injured a lot. So that's how he's ended up dropping. He's, quality-wise, he probably is a championship player, but he's had a lot of injury issues, so that's why he's made his way down. I don't know if you've ever heard of the Parky Plonker test, as some people call it, where he goes for a coffee with a player and then decides whether he wants him or not. By all accounts, I don't want to disrespect somebody when I don't know the actual conversations that have gone on, but I don't think the meeting of the minds was particularly. They didn't seem on the same page from what I've heard.
Okay,
is one way to put it. Because obviously we're not privy to.
Wait, are you saying Powell is a plonker? Is that what you're saying?
I can't confirm nor deny that Powell is a plonker.
You heard it here first. Bill said Powell is a plonker. For us newbies out here that don't know the term, what is a plonker? Just
a bit of an idiot. Not quite like a full blown bad guy, but just not the nicest person in the world, sort of thing.
Oh, so not a Billy Sharp.
Oh, but level. Billy Sharp is beyond the plonker. He goes beyond that status. Although, do you know what? Like it's the Billy Sharp thing is just ridiculous. He's just an absolute idiot. He is. Sorry, I'm not just like falling over and disappearing because of Billy Sharp. The dog's come back with a ball to play with, so at least he can keep himself occupied for a bit. So we were apparently quite close to signing him. There's rumours that he was he failed the Parky test, but you never really know. It could have been that they got on with each other and it just wages was the issue or something like that. Do you know what I mean? And he's
the fax machine might not have worked. We don't know.
You don't know. And with Stockport, I think the other rumor this isn't any sort of inside information. I find out everything through Twitter, despite being on the comms team. The club are really good at keeping a tight lip. It's other people that somehow find it out about it, and it goes on Twitter. Do you know what I mean? But the other rumor is that we were offering him a year contract or a 2-year contract, and Stockport offered 3. And when you're a footballer that's had injury issues, you're going to take the extra years on the contract, aren't you? Because it's just security for your family. So it might not even be that he was a plonker. It's just one of those things at Wrexham's level. But he's a good player. I don't think he's had a particularly great start at Stockport, but it takes time to gel with a new team anyway, doesn't it? Then in terms of other players that people will recognise, they have Paddy Madden, who's their captain. He's a striker. When he dropped down to Stockport in the National League, he came from Fleetwood. And that was sort of seen as like, look, everybody likes to say about big money Wrexham and all that nonsense, but Stockport spend just as much money as us, if not a little bit more. And they spent a lot of money to get Paddy Madden, and he's a very good player. So, he scored 40 goals in 100 games for Stockport. That's nearly a goal every 2 games, which I kind of think the likes of Messi, Ronaldo and Haaland, Mbappe and Paul Mullin, they all skew people's expectations of how much a striker should be scoring in a season because they score that much. And that's a very good record. Do you know what I mean? 40 goals in 100 games is really good. So he's a decent player, definitely one to watch out for. They have Kyle Wooten, who when Stockport got promoted, Wooten was actually playing for Notts County, and he was very good. He was a very good striker. He was Notts County's best striker until they signed Langstaff. So Wooten goes off to Stockport because they get promoted, goes up to League Two with them. They really like him as well, but then obviously Notts County signed Langstaff to replace him, and the rest history for them.
Oh yeah,
they've got good players all over the pitch. Stockport. There's their captain. I think no, he's not their captain, but he's one of their main players. Sarcevic used to play for Chester. He's He's a good player, though. They've got Louis Barry on loan from Aston Villa. Having watched a few Villa games with my granddad, like he's a very good young up and coming talent. He actually, during the COVID season, Villa played Liverpool in the FA Cup, and Villa had a COVID outbreak in the squad. And in a cup game, the rules were that the opposing team, the team that didn't have the outbreak, got to decide whether the game got postponed or not. Because obviously, with it being a cup game, it would then have to be rearranged for the week after, and fitting that in with schedules, etc. Liverpool didn't want to rearrange because they're in Europe and their schedule's very heavy, So they forced Villa to play, and the only team Villa could field were their under 19s or something like that. So it was literally a bunch of 16 and 17-year-olds playing for Villa against Liverpool, and he actually scored the goal that I think the game was 4-1 in the end. But Liverpool put out a pretty strong side. They had Salah and Mane were both playing, and Van Dijk played. Yeah, it wasn't quite full. It wasn't quite full strength, but it was as close to full strength as is reasonable against a bunch of 16 and 17-year-olds.
Yeah, you gotta love Liverpool. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
I lived in Liverpool for a year. I much prefer Everton, but that's another story. And he scored the goal, and it was pretty much a solo effort goal. He did all the work himself. So he's a bit older now, but he's got a lot of talent, that lad. He was at Salford last year on loan. So he's played in this league before, and he's ended up at Stockport. So he might be, if he plays, he'll be one to watch out for, definitely.
Okay. And I was looking up that Stockport did, going into League Two, they had 4.9 million in losses. So they definitely spent a good amount of money getting players.
Oh, there's nothing that winds me up more, Ran, than people talking about Wrexham being the big money team when Notts County and Stockport have spent loads of money. Chesterfield have spent loads of money. Granted, right? Our wage budget was probably the biggest in the National League. It's probably one of the biggest in League Two. I'm not going to argue the toss that we don't spend money, but let's be fair. There are other teams that are spending money as well, and you've got to get out of the National League. It's the only way you can do it, really. But yeah, it will be a really fun game against Stockport, and I am just absolutely gutted that I'm not going to physically be there. It's one of my favourite grounds to go to. So yeah, disappointed about that, but that's just one of those things. Wrexham tickets at the moment are like, I've got more chance of winning the lottery than getting a Wrexham ticket for an away game.
Yeah, it's Willy Wonka tickets. It's Willy Wonka golden tickets right now, which I know Rob and Ryan do not listen to this pod or watch it. But if anybody associated to the higher ups, the executives, tune in, just issue out some Wrexham bars, some milk chocolate Wrexham bars, and have some golden tickets in there.
Yeah, you can go to a match. It could be a red ticket instead. Can I get a red ticket?
Oh, yeah, a red ticket. Yeah. Have a red ticket. You get one, and you get a game. You get to go see a game. You get to go to a match.
They've kind of done that now, though. They've got a ballot, haven't they? So
yeah, okay.
They're keeping, I think it's 150 tickets behind, and if you're a member and you don't get from the sale, you're entered into the ballot. I don't know quite how it works. I've never really looked into it because luckily I got a season ticket, and I don't think it applies to away tickets. But there is like a ballot now to make sure that there's like a level of fairness for members, so it's not just you miss out on the day you can't go at all. There is that element of a little bit of a lottery, so you've got a chance of going if that's the case. But
I wonder if it's similar to, there's a race out here called Western States. It's an ultra marathon, and they give out golden tickets. But what they do is, if you've entered in, like qualified, you've had to run a 100-mile race beforehand. But if you enter into the lottery to go in, the first year you get a 1-for-1 entry. And then the second year, if you weren't selected through that lottery for a ticket, the second year you get 2. And it keeps on doubling each year of how many entries you get until you finally get the ticket.
I don't think it's like that. I don't know the exact setup, but that would make a lot of sense to me. That sounds like a
loyalty program.
Yeah. No, that would make sense. It's God, ticketing such a hard job. I got a lot of sympathy for the people who run the ticket office, because you're always going, no matter what system you put in place, you're always going to upset people.
Right.
There's no one size fits all sort of approach to it. And you're talking about a club, mate, that look, let's be completely real. Even in the first year of the takeover, we didn't sell out every game. You know, there were games. Granted, a lot of that was because we didn't get big away crowds in the National League. But, you know, there were games where there was only 7,000 or 8,000, which is very good for the National League. But it's not been like the last 2 years. Like it's almost become a bit of a phenomenon, you know, like in the town, it's, I got Wrexham tickets. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, people are just trying to go to say that they're there, and it's great, but a headache for people who need to go that route.
Seriously. I mean, it's that good and the bad, right? Of like each one of these steps where you're like, this is awesome. Promotion is awesome. You have this big reach. You have international fans who are following and know where Wrexham is on a map. And then at the same note, it's like, shit, but everybody loves Wrexham now. And paying the price for being the belle of the ball. Yeah,
exactly. And luckily, you know, I'm like the ticket guy. Whenever there's an event, music, football, whatever, for some reason, I've kind of just become the guy that sorts everybody's tickets out for them. I hate it, but I'd rather do that than miss out on stuff.
You're the nice guy. The nice guy. Yeah.
I'm the chum. But I don't know, the year that the season tickets came out, I just had a feeling, because I hadn't had a season ticket for a while, COVID, other reasons. Although I was going to most games, it didn't always make sense to have a season ticket. It was like, we've got to get in now before it becomes a problem. I just didn't see it becoming a problem within a year. Like I thought it was going to be, you know, like talking, let's get our memberships up so that when there is a loyalty scheme, when we're in the Championship, you know, we'll have had all that loyalty points behind us. I did not expect it to go this quick at all.
Yeah, and there was that guy on the season 1 of the documentary who was like a hooligan who was talking to his wannabe policewoman girlfriend.
Yeah.
And he was saying, well, I got to get the season ticket. She's like, you can't even go. And he's like, but I have to in case the ban gets lifted and I can go. He's like, because if I don't get one, I won't be able to get a season ticket later. And it's like, you know, as much of a great guy he was, he at least had some foresight of knowing that like, hey, this is, if you don't do it now, it's going to be pretty damn hard to get one.
Yeah, definitely. I think like people who've, I don't get to go to many Wales games just because the way that it is like, it's dead hard to get to Cardiff. It's like a 3.5 to 4 hour train journeys, and British trains are super reliable, really, really reliable. And, you know, if they play on the games can be on any day of the week. And if the home game's on a Monday, it's not physically, unless I drove and wanted to get home at 2:00 in the morning, it's not physically possible for me to do Wales games. But my mum used to go a lot pre-COVID. And like, I think that's where I saw it coming, because tickets have at times been hard to get for Wales, and she knew how to do all the memberships and all that sort of stuff.
Okay.
So I've seen that happen, and I just thought, yeah, you got to get in before it becomes, you're like, Wales were rubbish pre-2014 or whatever, and I saw her going from being able to get Wales tickets dead easy to then like, oh no, we've got to make sure we got this membership, we've got to make sure we're on at this time, we've got to make sure that blah blah blah. So yeah, that's
great parenting.
Oh yeah, she's great, mum. Fair play. What's it like in the US for like, maybe I don't know so much about the MLS, but like, you know, for big NFL or NBA games, is it hard to get tickets for them, or is it just, do they just price them that it's easy, but you just have to have the money for it?
Yes, and yes. You're correct on both of those. So if you want to get season tickets, and you know, get basically the season ticket's going to be your best price per game that you're going to get. You know, your average price per game is going to be the best with season ticket, but it's the same thing. If it's a big team, you've got to get in there early, and you know, they're going to sell out season tickets in a small window. And the people that are currently season tickets, they have the priority to renewing their season tickets before any are left out. But out here, I believe we sell less percentage of season tickets and more to the general public. But to that, our general public tickets are crazy expensive. And Ticketmaster, for instance, runs a beautiful job of doing that dynamic pricing, which constantly changes. So anybody that went to go buy preseason preseason, this US tour tickets, you would have saw that dynamic pricing in action from when they opened up a ticket. I think they started at around 75 per ticket. And these are upper level, huge, way back seats. And
the bleachers, as you guys call them, is it the bleachers?
Or
the nosebleeds.
The nosebleeds. Yeah, nosebleeds. And so way up tickets 75, and that dynamic pricing shot them up at one point in time, shot them up to like 400, 390 for those tickets per ticket. Wow. And the beautiful thing about Ticketmaster is they also have their service fees, which end up being somewhere around, 25% of your ticket price. So let's say you paid 100, then you're paying 125 for the ticket after their service fees and venue fees are there. It's a racket. They've been sued multiple times. They've lost multiple settlements, and it's still, they're so big. They're the type that will pay the fees and settlements because they're making so much money. They can do that. They can pay the fees. It doesn't matter.
Wow.
Yeah, they can pay their fees. We can't.
Yeah. I did see that there's a UFC event in November that John Jones is fighting Stipe Miocic, which I understand, that's going to be one of the biggest fights in UFC history, obviously, but
John Bones Jones.
Yeah, what a crazy man he is, but a hell of a fighter. I'm sure I read that the most expensive ticket was something like $111,000 or something like that. Yeah.
No.
My conversion rate isn't great at the moment. That's probably about roughly half the price of my house. Do you know what I mean? Maybe not quite half, but it's not that far off. I could do a lot of damage with that money, Ran. I love watching fights. I'm not spending that much money on a ticket to go and watch a fight. I'll watch it at home, thanks.
Oh, seriously. But that is, and something we talked about before, that we have been acclimated to spending way too much for things, products and services, that we don't flinch at it. There's not an uproar whenever tickets are super high. There are people that will obviously complain and go, these are expensive, but there's a larger percentage of people that just pay for it because you look at these games and they're sold out. The stadium is packed and full. That didn't happen on accident. And so people are paying those prices. And, but basically, I think I saw somewhere that the U.S. has the largest number of millionaires of any country. Wow. And so it would make sense with the largest number of millionaires that there are the largest number of people that can afford to spend way too much for games.
Yeah, definitely. And it's funny. That's one of the things that culturally the UK and the US are really quite different on. So during COVID, obviously because fans couldn't go to games, the Premier League started charging 15 quid for a box office. Ooh. Now 15 quid's not a lot of money, but if you're already paying for Sky, which is our our satellite service, Sky Sports and BT, well, it's called TNT now, but they're the two companies they're the only two companies you can watch the Premier League on, apart from Amazon, which is only 2 games a season or something like that. But they were charging 15 quid per game. And no offense, but I think Americans would just kind of lump it, but everybody kicked off over here.
Yeah.
Really kicked off. There was a boycott. They barely made any money. And then they went back on it eventually because I think they just realized, this wasn't a good idea because nobody's paying for it.
I love that. I love it.
Yeah, and then also with the boxing, the UFC, what you guys have as a pay-per-view for all the numbered events in the UFC, it's only ever a pay-per-view if it's a really big name like Conor McGregor.
Really?
That's partly because they're on at 4:00 in the morning, so people probably aren't going to watch it anyway. But a numbered event, people will literally go, nah, I'm watching it on Twitter. I'll wait for the highlights. Over here, even if it's only a 20 quid pay-per-view, we just vote with our feet, so to speak. They recently put the prices up for the boxing main events, and it's went from 20 quid to 25 quid, and everybody kicked off big time. Oh, whereas you guys regularly pay $120 or $130 for a pay-per-view, don't you, for boxing and stuff? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that
not get away with that over here at all.
That to us is normal.
Yeah.
Like that happens. And that's where it's like, I wish we had more of that culture here, because we're like perversely okay with paying way too much, even when we know it's way too much. We're perversely okay with paying way too much. There's even like a, which probably why some people hate some Americans, but there's a culture of like showing your receipts of like, I paid too much, and bragging about paying too much. Cause I'm such a baller. I have so much money. I can overprice, I can pay 10 grand at a restaurant and eat food that has gold flakes inside of it because I'm a baller and I can do that.
I mean, don't get me wrong. There are still people like that in the UK. I just think maybe the general populace aren't quite as prone to it. Maybe.
Right. And that's what I'd say is that our youth often fetishize that type of mentality of like, that's a successful person. If you can pay $10,000 for a meal, that means you're successful if you can do that. So it's like, what does that mean from an ego or personality standpoint? And that has a lot of value, where the currency value of being perceived as successful is maybe the most important thing for a lot of people here in the US. It's like, how am I perceived? Where I don't know if you guys do that over here, but when you meet somebody, you say, so what do you do? And that's the first qualifying thing that you ask about anybody.
I think we do that, but I don't know whether it's as much about the money as it is just a general sort of chit chat sort of thing.
Okay. Okay.
It's very much in the etiquette here to not ask somebody how much they earn. You don't ask people how much money they're on. You can obviously, if someone says they're like a teacher, you can literally go and find out how much I earn, because it's all public information for something like that.
Right.
But let's say if you were working in a factory and you were a manager, people aren't going to ask, what, they might say, is it good money? But they're not expecting to hear like the exact salary back. It's just like it's good money. I was like, I don't get paid enough or whatever. And that'll be that, really.
Yeah. And that's the same here. Is not really anybody asks somebody how much money they make.
Yeah.
Unless
it's something at least.
Yeah. Unless it's a special circumstance, like you said, where somebody's doing something and they've started a business and you're like, man, what are you pulling home every year? Because like, you're doing all right. You started this business. Like how that business is doing good. So yeah, culturally, that is very similar. Fairness to us Americans, we also give some privacy to people and don't get too intrusive. I mean, obviously there's your outliers that will ask everybody questions they don't need to ask anyways, but those are the small percentage. That's not what most people are like. Yeah.
I think as a culture, I love a lot of aspects of American culture. Like I love how friendly you are and how like you're a lot less bitter than British people, I think, in general.
Yeah,
like,
that's true.
We've definitely got a bitterness about us. Yeah. And I quite like that. Like, I quite like that we're bitter. I enjoy that aspect of British culture. But at the same time, we could probably learn from you guys a little bit on not being so bitter about everything.
Yeah. I mean, your phrase that I enjoy, and it doesn't speak to me at all because I'm a very optimistic person, is it's the hope that kills you.
Yeah.
That cracks me up, because it's like, that would be the thing that somebody said to their therapist, that their therapist immediately went, well, we've got a lot of work to do. Like, if your personal mantra is it's the hope that kills you, we got a lot of uphill sledding to do right now.
Yeah. And especially in football, that is like a way of living for a lot of us. We sort of live by that, the hope it kills you. A big part of why everybody loved the journey last year is because we've had so many of those hope that kills you seasons that it's not necessarily the crap seasons that bother you. It's that season when you nearly went up and it didn't happen.
And you heard that last season, and even the previous season is pulling a Wrexham. And that's on the same lines of, the hope that'll kill you. It's like the counter to that is like, oh, here we go. We're going to pull a Wrexham. Yeah. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
Or you did a loss. We pulled a Wrexham. Like, of course we did that. Of course we lost it, in extra time.
Yeah.
Pulled a Wrexham. Hey, Bill, why don't we do a little crest and badge?
Oh, yeah.
Cue the theme music.
Yeah, it's a good song. That,
yeah. Oh man, I love that song. So Bill, I have done zero of understanding what we're seeing, but I will say understanding that stock is a fortress or a castle that was constructed. I understand the castle that is on the front, and that's where I'm done. So, Bill, what do you have?
I don't know necessarily anything about it, but I did do a little bit of research earlier, and apparently it is the crest of Stockport, the town.
Okay, so it's the same one, and they added a football.
Basically, I think, looking at it, there was a Stockport castle which stood until 1775. I'm reading off Wikipedia right now, but is no longer there. The lions, they're lions that are featured like that on badges are called lion rampants. No idea why they're called a lion rampant, but that's what they're called. Okay. But apparently on the Stockport badge, it represents the counties of Cheshire and Lancashire, because Stockport isn't too far from the River Mersey, making it nearly in Lancashire. They also belong, the county is Cheshire, so that's where those two lions are supposed to represent. And then other than that, it's just the coat of arms of the city. So not a lot to it really. It's a quite nice clean badge though, isn't it? It's got that old school look, but it does also have the cleanness around the edges with the circular sort of backdrop or whatever you call it.
Yeah, it looks like a proper badge.
Yeah,
like this is the football looks a little off, but maybe because it's a red that is in white that really isn't seen anywhere else. But evidently the colors of Stockport originally were red and white. And it wasn't until, I don't know what the date was, but it was, 20 years after the inception, after 1883, I guess. So somewhere around there, they did switch to blue and white. So red was a prominent color for them. Yeah.
Yeah. They did used to play in white and blue stripes with like a pale blue, almost like an Argentina kit.
Okay.
They went through a period of doing that anyway after the World Cup in the late 70s when Argentina won. But as soon as Britain went to war with Argentina over the Falkland Islands, I think they ditched that kit pretty quickly. Which there was a lot of anti-Argentinian sentiment in the 80s, which I think was kind of misguided if you want to go and look at your history. But we're not reviewing British military history, so we'll leave that for someone who knows a bit better to look into it. And it's quite a controversial war, the Falkland Wars. But
and who could be against Britain invading their land? What is wrong with people these days? Kids these days. Okay.
It's contentious because a lot of the people who live in the Falklands want to be considered British, but I don't know where their history is. I will leave it there because that is going to get me in hot water, and I am starting a new job tomorrow. So
For the record,
let's just say
anti.
I have no opinions, or I have both opinions, whichever suits you best. That's how I feel.
I am a neutral. Unless a neutral is undesirable, then I am the thing that you desire.
Yes.
I hold that opinion. Yeah.
What I will say though is almost 99.99% of the time I am anti-war. So any war is never going to be looked favorably by me.
Yeah.
But that's not for political reasons.
Except for the band from the 70s, War. What is it good for? Absolutely nothing.
Nothing. Yeah.
Saying it good. Yeah. Well, that was I need to look up for next time what a rampant is.
Yes.
And understand maybe it's just like something ornamental, just some type of decoration.
I think it's just the stance that the lion stands in, but
okay, that like upright.
Yeah, I think so, but I could be wrong. They feature a lot on British badges anyway.
Which is odd because
there's no lions in the UK,
ever, right? There's never been.
I've seen some blokes that look a bit like a lion, but never an actual.
Seen a couple of bears, So Stockport, we'll be facing on Saturday. This is in lines of another grudge match. We had faced them last to a loss in a promotion race in 2021, and so this will be the first time we see them again since then.
Yeah,
and. So we have some old debts that we need to right, and hopefully we can repeat what we did with Grimsby. That would be awesome.
Would be nice.
They are not an easy team to hate. They're an easy team to root for with good history and in a pretty close, would you say, derby or not?
No, I'd say it's like fiercely contested normal game. Just on the cusp of being a rivalry.
Yeah. It's a rivalry diet, a diet rivalry, if you will. It is all the makings and trappings of a rivalry, but half the calories.
Yes.
Can't be mad at that. Can't be mad. Well, Bill, thank you so much again for teaching all of us how to Wrexham. I'm talking about our fans too. Yeah, I said it. No.
Nice one.
It has been a pleasure. I will speak to you again soon. And any closing words you want to say?
2-0 Wrexham up the town. That's what I'm going for. Yeah.
Okay. Well, with that too, I'm going to piggyback and I'm just going to go ridiculous with the score. I'm going to say 4-0. Double the bill.
Double the bill.
Double the bill.
Brilliant.
All right. Well,
nice one. Cheers, Ran.
Well, middle name Yunz, Bill Long. This has been a real one. We'll catch you next time. We'll catch everybody next time. And up the town.
Up the town.